Good morning, everyone. Here's your Mormon news update for July 26th, 2025. Let's start off today discussing what I want to call a Brad ad.
How do we help young people keep the enthusiasm for the gospel that they feel when they're at an FSY conference?
First off, Brad, you don't have to yell. Secondly, let's think about why Brad would want youth to remember their FSY experience. Brad wants youth to continually think about their FSY experiences because these conferences are highly structured environments designed to provide intense spiritual, social, and emotional peak experiences. Encouraging reflection on these moments serves to solidify faith, reinforce group identity, and motivate continued commitment to church standards and activities throughout their lives. FSY is intended to be a foundational experience that anchors youth to the church for life.
Ask them to share. Ask about their experiences. It's kind of like when a missionary comes home. You don't just say, hey, it's good to see you again. You say, how was your mission? What did you learn from your mission president? Do the same thing with these young people. How was FSY? What did you experience? What did you learn from your counselor? Tell us about your banner that you created as a company. Tell us about the cheer that you came up with.
It is too perfect that he compared FSY to Mormon missions. Mormon missions and FSY conferences are purposely intense and employ a systematic application of psychological control mechanisms that can lead to profound and sometimes disorienting shifts in an individual's identity, beliefs, and behavior. These programs often represent the most immersive and demanding experiences within Mormonism, making them particularly effective at deepening commitment and also the most cult-like experiences Mormons can have. They both utilize extreme behavior control. Missionaries live under highly rigid and prescribed daily schedules, dictating everything from wake-up times to sleep, what they eat, where they go, and who they can speak to. They are never permitted to be alone, unless in the bathroom, and must always be within sight and sound of a companion. All major decisions require permission from authority figures. FSY, while shorter, also involves a highly structured and regimented schedule, including set times for classes, activities, devotionals, and lights out. Participants follow strict rules regarding dress, conduct, and interactions. This level of pervasive control over an individual's physical reality and daily life is a hallmark of high-demand groups, fostering dependency and obedience to the group's rules and leadership. They also harness intensive information control. Missionaries are severely restricted in their access to outside information and media. They are generally limited to church-approved books, music, and online content, and communication with family and friends outside the mission is tightly controlled. They are explicitly taught to teach and not be taught when encountering non-members, discouraging open dialogue or critical inquiry. Similarly, FSY participants are immersed in a highly curated information environment. All lessons, activities, and discussions are designed to reinforce church doctrine and values with no exposure to alternative viewpoints during the week. Both environments effectively create a thought bubble where the group's narrative is paramount, minimizing or eliminating exposure to critical information, dissenting opinions, or non-approved sources, which is central to maintaining ideological purity and preventing critical thought. Both programs utilize repetitive teaching of doctrine, often with an emphasis on memorization and recitation. They heavily promote black and white thinking, example, us versus them, good versus evil, spiritual versus worldly. Powerful spiritual experiences are encouraged, and these emotional confirmations are then used as thought-stopping techniques to dismiss doubts or critical questions. For example, if a missionary or a teen at FSY feels confused or has a doctrinal question, they are often encouraged to rely on the spirit they felt during a past experience.
Tell us about the testimony meeting. Tell us about what you felt when you stood up and applauded at the talent show. Get them sharing, and the more they share, the more it will help them remember the experiences they've had, and the more it will help them continue with that enthusiasm.
And this is where the intense emotional control happens. Missions and FSY are both designed to generate intense emotional highs. These peak experiences experiences create powerful emotional anchoring, linking strong, positive feelings directly to the church, its teachings, and its community. There's significant social pressure to conform and express positive spiritual experiences. For missionaries, the success of their mission and their standing with family and leaders are tied to their perceived diligence and spiritual conformity. For FSY youth, positive peer influence and leader validation reinforce desired emotional states. Now let's go to Exponent 2 to discuss an article by Rose. She writes, 5 days before she died, brilliant LDS scholar Dr. Melissa Inouye gave a remarkable interview in which she described how women can be better included in the decision-making of the church regarding money. In response to the question, "What is your wildest dream for Mormonism?" she said, "We LDS women have huge potential to change the world because of the financial resources and, connected to that, the global logistical and administrative networks that we have. And, connected to that, the local, on-the-ground manpower and woman power that we have." I would interject here and just say person or people power. No need to gender everything. Back to the article. "We could do so much good if the women's organization, Relief Society, for example, were in charge of distributing our humanitarian aid and could coordinate those local projects in their areas. Or if, for example, to preserve some sort of complementarian difference but to make sure that women had significant power, if men were in charge of like the sacerdotal priesthood, call the men for the ordinances type things, and women were in charge of the finances, then we would have a true kind of codependent relationship. If you wanted money for the upcoming young men's camp trip, you would go to the Relief Society president and she would check the books." The article goes on to say, "I agree with Melissa," this is Rose talking, "women should oversee the church's financial resources. Many women have made significant sacrifices to pay tithes and offerings that fund the church, and they deserve the right to administer those funds. Until 1978, the LDS General Relief Society presidency controlled its budget and also administered the humanitarian aid of the church. Emmeline Wells was tasked by Brigham Young in 1876 to issue a call for LDS women to save wheat, and she immediately wrote an editorial in the Exponent magazine to do just that. Women responded, and the General LDS Female Presidency used the wheat to help starving folks during wars and famines for 102 years afterward. On a ward level, women could serve as ward clerks and oversee ward budgets. My mother did years ago, and many women are well qualified for that. Perhaps paid custodial care would be reinstated if women controlled global church finances." Some of my own thoughts, I like to think of it this way. Men are in control of the finances simply because they are men. A woman with an advanced degree in finance is not qualified to be a ward clerk, though, because she doesn't have the right genitalia. Back to Rose's article. "The following are some ways the LDS Church could use its vast human and financial resources to help those in need. Relief Society presidencies could be trained in simple methods that identify childhood malnutrition and then provide nutrition for starving children. The General Relief Society presidency could coordinate with wards and stakes to produce and distribute nutritional supplements for children to reduce wasting. Ward Relief Society leaders could identify humanitarian needs in their area and then coordinate with their local community and religious leaders to identify and implement solutions. LDS missionaries in impoverished areas could devote more of their time to humanitarian service. The current LDS teaching of male leaders for starving folks to pay tithing should be replaced with a female executed policy that no one in an LDS congregation starves. As more people in the world are forcibly displaced as a result of persecution, conflict, or violence, LDS women could lead out in helping refugees, immigrants, the homeless, and the sick with the critical needs of housing, shelter, food, clothing, healthcare, and education. Female LDS leaders could focus more LDS resources, time, and attention on caring for the living than serving the dead. The LDS Church, under female-controlled financial leadership, could become a world humanitarian leader. If women in leadership prioritized assisting those in need to the same extent that men in leadership concentrate on constructing temples, the church would start to realize the mission that Jesus designated for his followers. LDS scripture condemns churches for refusing to help those who suffer. For behold, you do love money and your substance and your fine apparel, and the adorning of your churches more than ye love the poor and the needy, the sick and the afflicted. We cannot, as a church, claim to follow Jesus and then turn our backs on those who are suffering in our midst. And as Jesus said, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Okay, what are your thoughts? Do you think the Mormon Church could benefit from women being in charge of the finances? Now let's go to LDS Daily for this update that says the construction of the Heber Valley, Utah Temple of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints will move forward after a Utah judge dismissed a lawsuit that aimed to block the project. KSL.com reports that 4th District Judge Jennifer Mabee ruled that Wasatch County acted within its legal authority when it approved a development agreement for the temple in November 2023. The Heber Valley, Utah Temple was first announced in October of 2021 during the church's general conference. On April 21, 2023, the Wasatch County Council updated its outdoor lighting rules to allow limited uplighting for certain buildings, including the temple. The new rules included restrictions on angle, brightness, and shielding to help protect views of the night sky. On November 8, 2023, Church of Jesus Christ Temples.org reports that the County Council unanimously approved the development agreement for the temple. Soon after the agreement passed, a group of residents tried to put the issue on the 2024 ballot, but they didn't gather enough signatures. KSL.com reports that the group then filed a lawsuit in 4th District Court, claiming the county's approval process didn't follow zoning laws and other legal requirements. As the temple project moved forward, one of the main concerns raised by residents was protecting the region's dark skies. A group called Save Wasatch Back Dark Skies formed in response to the new lighting rules. KPCW reported that the group filed a separate lawsuit in May 2023, arguing that the public hearing process wasn't transparent. When the temple agreement was finalized in November 2023, church architect Curtis Miner explained several changes made in response to lighting concerns. According to one source, Miner said the temple would be one of the dimmest temples in the world. On July 23, 2025, Judge Mabee ruled in favor of the church and Wasatch County. Personally, I am not surprised that the church prevailed. They are extremely calculated in their temple building and the way they legally approach the process. Matter of fact, I was recently at the conference center in Salt Lake City, and you will never believe what one of the sister missionaries said to me as I peered off the rooftop garden to the Salt Lake Temple nearby. I had asked her why the new entrances to the Salt Lake Temple had cross-shaped roofs, and she must have thought I was talking about the roof of the temple because she sort of absent-mindedly replied, "The spire of the temple helps direct our eyes and thoughts toward God. It's an architectural part of the temple that is very important to us." This made me realize that the message that temple architecture is integral to worship is permeating the Mormon masses in what is surely an intentional dissemination of information from the very top. Now let's watch the Deseret News contradict itself. In an article published on their Facebook page on July 24th of this year at 10:30 a.m., it says, "It is important for all to celebrate Pioneer Day in remembrance of the sort of grit and resolve that was able to turn a barren desert into a world-class metropolitan area," the Deseret News editorial board writes. Now let's jump over real quick to an article they published on July 24th, 2004 that states, "Pioneer legend paints a grim picture of the Salt Lake Valley, barren, harsh, and a desert, save a lone cedar tree. In reality, say historians, the valley was well watered with tall grasses and trees along the many stream banks. One of the greatest myths of the church is that the valley was total desolation," said the late Dr. Stanley Kimball, a Utah historian. No pioneer diary accounts he ever found supported the desolate valley idea. Dear editorial board for the Deseret News, maybe you should check your own archives before you publish something. Next, I want to do a little temple admittance fee math, an idea I picked up from an astute listener. The median household income in the US in 2023 was roughly $80,000. Let's say I'm a Mormon, and that is the household income for my family. Because I'm extra righteous, I pay my tithing on my gross income, and every year I give $8,000 to the Mormon church. I also, because I am super righteous, attend the temple every month. In the Mormon church, one must be a full tithe payer to attend the temple worthily. So if I consider tithing as an entrance fee to get into the temple, it would then cost me approximately $666 each time I attend the temple. I wish you could have seen my face when I did that last bit of math and saw the 666 come up. If you look at it this way, though, attending the temple is quite expensive. And last up today, let's finish with this great quote that says, "Friendly reminder, the folks who left your church won't hear the shit you've been talking about them, but the ones quietly deconstructing while still in your congregation will." And it's not having the effect you think it is. And that's your update for today, folks. I absolutely hope you have the day that you deserve.